Welcome to Kent ISD Literacy Leaders and Coaches Network Remote Edition. We are excited to bring you our 16th episode of the LLCN Brief. We appreciate those that are now following us on your preferred podcast outlet and are excited to share that we now have about 3,800 plus unique listens to our previous 15 podcast episodes. These listens come from 28 different countries and 44 different states. We appreciate that you are finding value in the information we are making available for you. Thank you for continuing to share our message with those that you know will benefit from listening.
This episode will explore the educational resources available from the Michigan Learning Channel and WGVU with a focus on the literacy program Read, Write, Roar. I'm Sarah Shoemaker, early literacy coach at Kent Intermediate School District.
And I'm Mark Raffler, educational consultant from Kent Intermediate School District. Recognizing that various stakeholders play a crucial role in the education of a child, the Michigan Learning Channel and WGVU have teamed up to offer educational supports to students, families, educators, volunteers, and the community. Many of these resources are electronic and are accessible anytime, anywhere. Opportunities for students to review material, learn new concepts, or engage with content different than their grade level exists. Adults can preview how a lesson might be taught, utilize resources in small group lessons, and even provide students with a reteaching opportunity through the Michigan Learning Channel resources.
With the importance that we know to be true about keeping learning going beyond a school day, a school year, or even when there is a school break, knowing more about these types of resources and how to access them is significant. We are excited to engage in a conversation today to get more information on how to gain access. Just listen to the possibilities that exist as we explore this episode of the LLCN Brief.
We are honored to have Annie Spear and Rachel Cain joining us today. Annie Spear is the Literacy Content Project Manager for MESA and the Michigan Learning Channel. Annie's the mom of two great kids and has been in education for over 25 years. In her time in education, she has worked in the states of Massachusetts and Michigan in roles as varied as classroom teacher, literacy coach, adjunct professor, and most recently, teacher for the Read, Write, Roar materials, which you will learn more about in this podcast. Annie has also been a co-author in books including Let's Talk, Getting Your Baby Ready to Read, Word Study for Literacy Leaders, Guiding Professional Learning, and in various articles through the Michigan Reading Journal. Welcome, Annie. Glad to have you here today.
Thanks, Mark, for that great introduction, and thanks for the opportunity to be here today.
We're also joined with Rachel Cain. She is the Education Engagement Specialist for WGVU Public Media. She's a former high school teacher right here in the state of Michigan. She's a current Michigan Learning Channel liaison for WGVU. She also handles the kindergarten through 12th grade education and engagement opportunities and is the ed tech coordinator as well at WGVU. Rachel, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks so much for having me. I'm very excited.
Thanks, Rachel and Annie, for being here. Can you tell us a little bit about the Michigan Learning Channel?
Hi there, Sarah. Yeah, so the Michigan Learning Channel is really interesting and neat because it's a public media partnership and it's comprising 7 different PBS stations that are in Michigan, and there's actually one in Indiana too. So, though it's a local television channel, it's also a streaming service and it provides on demand access to high quality educational content that you might find in a classroom. When I think about the Michigan Learning Channel, I see it as a silver lining of the COVID-19 pandemic that we're all still recovering from. Initially, when Detroit Public Television, which is now Detroit PBS, received some state funding in 2020, their goal was to think about how to provide instructional content for families while schools were shut or things were a little bit confusing and we're all getting on our feet and trying to figure out what to do to provide access for families and children at home. And always it was with the goal of being an augmentation to what teachers were going to do and not a replacement of. And that maintains today as far as how teachers are still viewed as, the main person you want to go to for your educational content. What happened when they started looking at what was needed through the Michigan Learning Channel is that literacy was a priority that they wanted to address. And so they reached out to the Michigan Association of Intermediate School Administrators, which is also known as MAISA, because MAISA had such a wonderful reputation for literacy leadership and guidance in the state of Michigan through the essential instructional practices in early literacy that were produced through the Early Literacy Task Force with MAISA. So they had such a wonderful reputation at MEISA due to the literacy leadership and guidance that they provided through the essential instructional practices and early literacy. So after they reached out, this resulted in a partnership that Susan Townsend at the time led through MAISA and Georgianne Hebert led from Detroit PBS. And they organized teams and resources to create the Michigan Learning Channel and really to create the award winning flagship Michigan Grown Literacy series, which is known as Read, Write, Roar. And since that time, the Michigan Learning Channel has only continued to grow in the content and assets that it can provide.
Yeah, and I think what's so great is it's not just about the lessons, though the lessons are amazing. It's really truly about accessibility too. With on air channels, live streaming, and that on demand viewing, it really ensures that all students, teachers, and families can benefit regardless of the location and schedule. I think we saw that so much during COVID that we really became aware that access was limited and it was a problem and we needed to find a solution. But it doesn't just end with the screen. Our content comes with resources like lesson plans, activities, printables, just all kinds of ways to interact with the material and really get the most from the learning. And perhaps best of all is the human resources we have. I'm a little biased here, but every station across Michigan has their own Michigan Learning Channel coordinator, just like me. And our job is really to connect with teachers and families and to provide those targeted resources. We're just always a phone call away or an email away. We're right there. We're willing and ready to provide whatever teachers need.
So, really, we have a partnership with so many different organizations, entities to provide quality learning and access that goes beyond the screen.
Exactly. Yeah, it's pretty exciting to think about that.
Yeah, I think it's the best of education, right? I mean, that way that we can partner together and we can really put learning and students first.
Thank you for sharing that background.
Well, thanks for getting us started with overview of that Michigan Learning Channel. Could you tell us more about what programming is available and how might listeners access it?
So, yeah, not only do we have the traditional offerings like literacy, math, social studies, and science content, we even have content for those like important skills like social emotional learning, right? The things that we know are really the foundation for a lot of the other things. One of my favorites, for instance, is Pop Check, which stands for Pause, Own, and Practice. And it's just a short little show that helps students. And let's be honest, adults to learn and practice those mindfulness tools that can be so helpful in the classroom. I also really love our elementary math show called Math Mites. It was actually designed by a teacher and it addresses those early math skills. And I also love Extra Credit, a show that puts Michigan high schoolers on the screen to deliver lessons for upper elementary and middle schoolers. So you get to really learn from your peers, learn from people you look up to a little bit, and also engage those high schoolers. And a personal favorite of mine on location, these are virtual field trips all across Michigan where students can visit places that they may not have had the opportunity to see. We have visited castles, we visited museums and parks, and there's even more being created all the time. Every station actually creates ones in their own community. So we really get to see what is inspiring in their community. And it's just a cool little virtual field trip. And of course, there's so many more offerings when you're ready to check it all out on our station.
All right. So when I asked that question about program, I certainly didn't expect that for an answer. All the different content areas, social emotional learning, as well as some different shows. I didn't realize there were so many options available. I also appreciate the idea of bringing in presence of students, use that term of peers, and then some of that different virtual field trip opportunities. So hopefully through some of the listening and ideas of this, our listeners will get a chance to think about how they might be able to integrate that even to giving, students, or parents even that are visiting ideas around how they could get access to places in Michigan or other places that maybe they hadn't thought of before. And I also appreciated your point about the stations each jumping in. I've admired that element of collegiality in, the programming, but in the resource itself. So it sounds like a lot of great opportunities in programming that maybe were beyond what people were even expecting when they would come to visit this in the first place.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think another point that I really want to highlight too is the fact that every station does jump in and create some content for it really means that everything is tailored to our individual communities. There's really a voice of our individual communities there. So we listen to our teachers, we have our ear to the ground, and we get to hear what is needed in our schools and help provide that. So it really allows us to be local focused.
So the reason we originally reached out to you, Annie and Rachel, was because of the Read Write Roar program. Can you delve a little bit further into the programming centered around literacy titled Read Write Roar? What's important for us to know here?
Thanks, Sarah, for indulging me to be able to talk to you about this. I'm really excited about Read, Write, Roar. In simple terms, we could just say this is a free literacy series that you can find on Michigan Learning Channel or PBS Media for pre-kindergarten to grade 3 right now. But really, there's just so much more to know about it. When you watch a show, you don't know the type of planning and work that goes in the background of creating and producing it. And what was so special about this particular show is that we had a trusted, rich media resource, which was the Michigan Learning Channel, teaming up with a trusted leading educational partner, which was MAISA, to create a show grounded in literacy research. Everything that was done with this show was done with explicit planning and with purpose. And MEISA first reached out to me. I attended a meeting in like August of 2020 initially that they had this idea of doing this, and then they reached back out in November. And I was so excited to think about how a literacy show could be created for families during the pandemic. And one of the reasons I was so passionate is because when schools first shut down, I had started doing free online classes through something called Annie's Academy, which I had thought, teachers are trying to figure out what to do, and I miss teaching. So I'll just offer some free classes. And so it gave me some joy to be able to teach kids again and had kids from Michigan and New Hampshire, Ohio, Massachusetts that would just come in and join me. And I made up like different kinds of lessons. Like one of them was ABC superheroes and one was mystery word. And we had a research group. But all of those were grounded in the literacy essentials research, but I made them crafted in a way that kids didn't really need anything to come to learn with me except for like scrap paper. And as it turned out, when we met with Detroit PBS, that's exactly what they were looking for a literacy show, something that could be high quality, but that kids wouldn't need a lot. So it'd be easy for families to do. So they ended up through MAISA hiring a project coordinator, which was Dr. Rhonda Provost, who's been an educational leader in our state for quite some time, and then started really utilizing the position with MAISA to get literacy coaches on board. So initially we thought, okay, we're going to vet content of what's out there and see if there's any literacy content we'd want to use. And so there were teams of us looking through content. And what we decided was that really nothing was kind of reaching the bar of what we would expect for the literacy essentials to pick and say, yes, MAISA could like really stand behind this and we just add some supplemental things. And so what resulted is that we ended up doing this Michigan grown literacy program that was all teacher made and authentic. And now that's known as Read, Write, Roar. Part of what's important to share about that is that we put out a casting call, or I say Detroit PBS and MAISA for the teachers and really wanted representation from around the state, and there was a team that did interviews for all the teachers. I thought, well, maybe I'll just put in my name in the hat and do an audition. And in the meantime, they had also asked me to kind of be part of the planning of what should the show look like. And so I had kind of leveraged the things I did with Annie's Academy because they had been well received. So I worked with the amazing producer Kyle Vernier and then Jillian Gainsley at Detroit PBS, and we talked about what could we do to frame the show before bringing in coaches and teachers just to get us ready to launch as soon as we had everybody. So I know I'm like kind of delving into a story, but the story of the show is kind of, I think, part of what makes the show so unique because once we had this structure, The teachers were hired. I ended up being hired as a first grade teacher for the show. And so then I was working with coaches, and we were all like, they gave feedback on things I had scoped out. We made a scope and sequence for this so it would be aligned with content standards in literacy. We also made sure we had themes around science and social studies. And so once that started, there were 11 of us hired throughout the state, and we were filming in basements, living rooms, like backyards, like all over the place, doing handmade resources for the background. And so you get that feel when you watch Read, Write, Roar that it is teacher made. And that was the intent the whole time, is so that it was very authentic. They sent us web cameras, we're recording in our houses. Just it was wildly exciting, and I sometimes think about, like, how did we actually accomplish this? I mean, in 18 months, we created across K to 3 224 episodes aligned to state standards, aligned to literacy essentials research, just crafted by really talented certified educators in Michigan with support from the MAISA trained, like, excellent literacy coaches. And you know what? It became well received. It got an honorary award in broadcasting as a show. And then they decided to make a pre K show. Right now, there's only 12 episodes of the pre K. Because it was post pandemic, the pre K show was filmed in studio with a wonderful educator who is from the Michigan State University Child Development Center, Erica Colon, and she worked with one of the literacy coaches who had done the K3 work, Janice Miller. Just the two of them worked on that episode series with 12 episodes. But they also were able to do some things like make things for families, like family facing videos about how to support kids. And those also have resources such as handouts that are in Arabic and Spanish as well as English. So that's developed over time, and the call for more literacy content continued to grow. So our relationship between Michigan Learning Channel and MAISA has grown as well, which is how I turned out being sharing part of my work across MAISA and Michigan Learning Channel at this point. And we're making a 4 or 5 Read Write Roar series, which is currently in production right now. It's going to be filmed featuring parts of Michigan. They're much shorter, bite-sized pieces of content so teachers can easily use them in their classroom or easily send them home for families. But it's been a journey and a pretty exciting one, I think. And there's a lot of people around Michigan who have a part in the show. So I think that's also like really exciting to know that it represents so much across our beautiful, great state.
Thanks, Annie, for that additional information about the Read, Write, Roar part. Perhaps I should ask first. You mentioned this briefly, but how do families find Read, Write, Roar and the other programming?
That is a great question. So, one of my favorite things to do when I'm out and about, and if a parent's talking about literacy, is show them that there's an app. So, there's a Detroit PBS app you can download on your phone, and you can click on Michigan Learning Channel in it, and then you can look for content K to 3 and Read Write Roar is right there for you. Other shows Rachel mentioned, like Math Mites, are easily available and Pop Check. So, one way is an app, like super simple. Another way, if you have your PBS local station on, it's going to have all of these shows running with Michigan Learning Channel content, and also just going right to michiganlearning.org. And there's a Read Write Roar website. You can just search for particular shows you want, and it will bring up all the content for you. So um, it's really great that you can just access this in so many ways so easily. In my opinion, I think that's one of the things that really creates a easy pathway for educators to use it, and for educators to share it with families. In a way that's not, it's very low maintenance. And that's what families need in our world, right? They want to support their kids, but we need to make it so that it's not hard to do that. And they can say, oh, I trust this. And there it is, pops right up on your phone for you.
So we can access it on mobile devices or tablets with the app. Even if we're not in the Detroit area, that Detroit PBS app will work. Um, in classrooms, a teacher could access it through the PBS website or a local television station, the local PBS station.
Yes, I should mention, which I didn't, is that if you have a Roku device in your house, that's another way you can do the PBS, download the PBS app through that too. And you can watch it through that. Like we have a colleague at MAISA who his family member lives in Trinidad and Tobago, and they use our content for their kids as a supplemental resource. So, yeah, it doesn't matter where you are, you can access it if you can get connection. So,
So, free access to authentic teacher made lessons, lots of them, like over 200, ranging from grades pre K coming to fifth grade soon.
mhm, yep.
Um, it's wide reaching based on the literacy essentials, and there's materials available in multiple languages as part of the pre K show in Arabic and Spanish, in addition to English.
Yes, that's correct. But for all of the series, each show has an activity guide. So when you go to the show, it'll say like download resources. So for the 224 K3, the 12 pre-K, and upcoming with the, I believe we're going to have 48, 4 or 5 episodes, they'll all have that activity guide code that will go along with the lesson to support kids to be able to partake and have something to write on. But the beauty is you don't have to have something to write on. Like that's also something that we really aimed to do was you just need you can just participate by watching or you need anything to write with, anything to write on. Like I would even say if you have scrap paper laying around or a broken crayon, like you it does not need a lot of materials for kids to be able to access and feel successful.
Thank you.
Sure.
What are some of the benefits of providing learning opportunities beyond the school day or the school year?
I mean, yeah, we've all heard of the summer slide, right? That just unfortunate learning loss that often happens during long breaks from the classroom or, during that summer month. But really, by engaging in continued learning during those times, students can maintain and even reinforce some of the knowledge and skills they've acquired. But I think even beyond just that traditional way of thinking about education, I really feel like learning outside of regular hours provides opportunities for students to explore subjects and activities that may not always be covered in the classroom, or at least allow things to go a little bit more in depth, giving students that chance to really learn a little bit more about what's already exciting them. It really allows for more flexible and personalized approach to learning where students can pursue their own interests and passions in a less structured environment.
Yeah, you bring about the idea of the traditional pieces and the main reasons why, such as maintaining or reinforcing the learning that's already occurring. But I appreciate you talking about going on beyond that classroom and you bring in their interests, right? So that motivation and engagement you can drive out of kids to take it beyond maybe where you what you might see during what people might see as that traditional where you maintain or reinforce learning that's happening in school.
Absolutely. I think sometimes we forget that learning is fun. It just is fun when you really truly are picking up new information. As humans, we are like coded with a desire to learn. And when we treat it as the fun it is, I think we can really motivate students. And sometimes we lose that. Sometimes we lose that in a traditional setting. And we just have to remember that students really do enjoy learning. Humans of all ages really do enjoy learning. And when we can cultivate that, when we can remind ourselves of that, and we can put play back into that, we can really see learning excel. And I think that Michigan Learning Channel does that.
Yeah, and you're right. Even when you think of, as you termed the summer slide piece and maintaining and reinforcing, I think even that aspect of it, we can get caught up in that also being the traditional things that we focus on when honestly, even with these other opportunities that you're sharing are here, there's learning that is occurring. It might not be as pointed or as structured as what that you might get in the more traditional classroom or those types of lessons. But with these other opportunities, there's still learning that's happening and carrying the learning forward and expanding on the learning that's actually happening.
Absolutely.
We've talked about a lot of resources today. What are the ways these resources can best be utilized by educators to support their work?
I love that you asked this question, Sarah, because I love to talk about how this resource could be used by educators. I think about myself as a former elementary educator and how I would be using this in my classroom. And even though it was initially developed for families, there's a lot of ways we're using it in classrooms and can continue to use it. So as Rachel talked about, as I talked about, there are activity guides. So knowing that each lesson has an engagement resource with it really makes it like a valuable package for educators either to utilize in their classroom or for them to be able to share with families at home to support kids who might need a little bit of extra support on something. But I also consider how children that need some enrichment could be doing things that are beyond their grade level because, if you're in first grade, but you are really doing great with morphology and the word study that's going on in your classroom, you could be doing lessons that are up in the second or third grade work as part of your small group instruction. So I think it gives us that reach to tailor some small group instruction in classrooms. And then I think about when I used to have parent volunteers come into the classroom, and sometimes I wouldn't know that people could come. And it's a great thing that you could give to a family volunteer or community member and say, oh my gosh, there's this. If you know a group of students that are working on their letter names and sounds, you could send them with a tablet or have them log into a computer and utilize one of the videos to do because the person doesn't need training and they can just be there to facilitate. I think about our parapros, right? A lot of times they get put in our classrooms and they don't get training. And so if you wanted a paraprofessional to be able to do things with, kids who are having a hard time like segmenting and blending words, for example, you could have them watch some mystery word lessons or some word letter lessons, and then they could get really good at that, do it with the kids, with the teacher on the show at first, and then be able to make their own lessons. So, as far as like in the classroom, there are lots of ways you could use it as part of your regular day to day instruction. But also, if you have a sub that's coming in and you want to have something ready made to leave in your sub plans, and have that QR code engagement sheet ready for that sub and say, here's the page. Just pull up from that QR code and there you go. You're ready to go with that lesson. One of the things in the coaching work we've talked about is how you could use these for a model for a teacher. If there's a teacher who wants to do something like a word ladder, we had Dr. Duke sharing with our coaching network just yesterday, in fact, about the value of word ladders and how important that is to do as a practice, right? That's research supported. And so word letters are absolutely on Read, Write, Roar. And a teacher who doesn't know what that is could look up a word ladder episode, watch the episode, and then think, oh, I can do that. Or they could do a couple with the teacher and use those in their classroom, and then they'd be comfortable enough to do their own. A coach can look with a teacher who started something and they can, look at what they're doing against the lesson they watch and think, oh, what would I tweak or change with that? So I think there's lots of ways that we can use it in the classroom, but yet it still serves that purpose, which was the initial part for Detroit PBS, which was a resource to support families. So all these things can be sent home with families. Rachel brought up about the summer slide. Absolutely, that is a thing. But she also brought up about play, and we want kids to have engaging time in the summer where they have some free space and time to explore and do things that are of their interest. And so Michigan Learning Channel has a summer book that you can download online. They provide an 8-week program that has a compilation of the different series that they have from Michigan Learning Channel, but also because it's a PBS media station, other PBS assets are in that book too. So there's other shows that you will see in the book that you can use as well. And so that's kind of a real advantage of Michigan Learning Channel being such a trusted resource and having that PBS affiliation. So it creates a fun engagement for families in the summer, or for if you're already doing a summer program, it's certainly a supplement to your summer program that you can use. And one of the things we talked about earlier that I think about with family members and for kids is for those kids that might still be struggling with something, being able to say to a family member, so and so is really working hard to learn letter names and sounds, but still, that's something that's really hard. And then say, but you could go to the Michigan Learning Channel and look up the kindergarten letter heroes lessons, which are fun. That child can be learning their letter name and sounds, just safely watching it in the comfort of their own home or off in a corner in a classroom on a tablet, practicing different letter names and sounds using a research supported protocol that we have in Letter Heroes. I think that's pretty exciting. And there's so many other resources, like Rachel mentioned, on location being so wonderful for kids to experience other places in Michigan and have those virtual field trips where they can kind of broaden their horizons of places or things in Michigan and have some inspiration of stuff they might want to do that they didn't even know existed. As a parent, I can say Math Mites has been helpful too, because when my children have come home with things I didn't know how to do, I did look those things up on Math Mites, and then it helped me realize what I was supposed to do to support them to do that. So I think there's lots of ways that just all the content can serve families, educators. Certainly, I have more of a lens on the literacy piece because that's the world I live in, but the other content is really rich. When Rachel talks more about the other pieces that are on there, I think you'll just be really excited to think about how those could be used in classrooms.
So we really have a model for not only students, families, volunteers, paraprofessionals, potentially guest teachers or new to the profession teachers as well as seasoned teachers who are looking for maybe a different way to do something or a model for a lesson that they want to focus in on in their classroom, all wrapped into one here. Opportunities for first teaching, reteaching, student practice with skills, all based in research and the literacy essentials.
You've got it. What a great summary of all that, Sarah. Yeah, thanks.
Thank you.
We've asked some questions and appreciate all the expertise that you have offered. As we conclude this interview, what have we not asked that is important to highlight here?
Yeah, so we've had a chance to really share a lot about what Michigan Learning Channel specifically is doing as a statewide resource, but I also wanted to highlight what WGVU Public Media is doing right here in West Michigan. So we actually just finished our annual Henry Pesca Art and Poetry Contest, which is a project of the West Michigan Holocaust Partnership, in which students can submit their artwork, their prose, their poetry that's inspired by their classroom learning. And really, to support teachers in their efforts, the West Michigan Holocaust Partnership has curated a collection of high quality interactive resources and lessons to support educators in creating an authentic and meaningful learning experience for students in meeting those Michigan Holocaust and genocide education standards. As a former high school teacher, I had to create some of those lessons. I had to teach some of those lessons. And it can be difficult sometimes to find the right stuff. There's a lot of resources out there, but finding what's going to connect with your students specifically and what's going to treat this content in a really respectful, serious manner can be a challenge. And so that was really something that the West Michigan Holocaust Partnership focused on. And they've created a fantastic collection of free resources. We also have the Student Reporting Labs. And if you're not familiar, Student Reporting Labs is a project from PBS NewsHour, which teaches students media literacy and video journalism, really empowering them to share their own perspectives and join important conversations. Grand Valley Student Reporting Labs, or GVSRL, is in its pilot year, and it's a partnership between WGVU Public Media and GVSU to offer local implementation, providing journalism students and journalism teachers with those storytelling opportunities, mentorship opportunities, and access to professional resources. Though I really could go on forever, I'll end with my last resource and maybe even my favorite one, which is our lessons on the fly. We know that teachers are going through it right now. We have a teacher shortage and we have a sub shortage as well. And we figured we can't fix that. We can't miraculously come up with new subs, but we can at least help lighten that load. So we've assembled a list of printable and easily implemented one-off lessons that teachers can really use for those subplans or just for a last-minute activity if they get called in to fill in for another teacher. And those resources go from pre-K all the way up to 12th grade, from PE to math, and we collect them from various places, including Michigan Learning Channel and including PBS Learning Media as well. So there's really something for everyone there. And all of those resources that I've mentioned can be found on our website, wgvu.org.
Well, Rachel, I'm actually overjoyed that you went that direction with the local opportunity because when we were talking about even making this connection and having this conversation, we knew that that was one aspect that we had hoped would really come from the conversation is just really what there is through our own PBS outlet right here in our backyard with WGVU. So you highlighting those pieces is a great addition to really support our listeners here in Kent County through the LLCN group. And you brought up the media literacy piece and the local opportunities. And I think it not only gives them content, but it makes them aware of what are outlets or resources that they can possibly even reach out to themselves, maybe even beyond what WGVU might have. And the last piece with the lessons on the fly, that's a great idea to have out there. And I know there's conversations having around that and some of what the chat GPT and the other AI resources are promising. But for you to have those pieces out there, have them ready and accessible, if someone can get comfortable with them and find out how to get them quickly, then they can really take advantage of them as they're intended to be.
Absolutely. And just to highlight a little bit even further, we also offer trainings on all of this. So you can call up our education department at WGVU and we can come in and offer a training. We're even doing media literacy trainings as well. And we're starting to touch on AI and how to use that in the classroom in an ethical manner.
Great. Great. And Annie, did you have some other things to add?
Yeah, I mean, there's so much to talk about. Just sort of, I mean, Rachel highlighted the amazing work that's happening at WGVU. And so just imagine that, multiply that. There's 7 stations in Michigan, right? And so each of them has this unique way that they are serving a population and creating all these resources. One of the things that we haven't talked about yet is that the director of the Michigan Learning Channel is Matt Hamilton, and he really does want to hear from educators about how they're utilizing content and creating spaces for educators to be involved. And I would certainly love to hear how people are using things. So if you are utilizing this content, please let me know, let Rachel know, reach out to someone. If any of what we're saying is interesting, you can just go to michiganlearning.org. You'll find contact information for the people that you need to get in touch with there. Certainly, if you want to learn more about what the literacy essentials are and why it was so important that we grounded everything in that for literacy, literacyessentials.org has all information for you, plus free learning and modules for you that you can access there that were done with leading researchers, including Dr. Nell Duke and Dr. Tanya Wright and Dr. Laura Tortorelli, that all were part of that series. Again, free access, and this is accessible to anyone. So I think just leaning into that, the fact that all the things that we have mentioned and talked about are free and accessible to anyone, anywhere. I believe that this sets Michigan Learning Channel up with an opportunity for Michigan to be a leader, nationally, internationally. Certainly, again, I have the literacy perspective, but the other content as well is very strong, because really what's being demonstrated is how powerful a public media partnership can be with an educational organization, and thinking about how the things that are provided can support as a supplement to a local educational system or for a family. And we know really everyone wants what's best for kids, right? Whether you're a family member or caregiver of a child, you want to provide them the best things. If you're a teacher, you want to provide them the best things. None of this replaces what you do for the children in your lives, but it's just a way for you to have a trusted resource. You don't have to do all the work. It's kind of like lifting the burden for you to get that access. So in our world that's just very accessible with the internet in many places, not all, I realize, but in most, right? It's downloading an app to your phone, going to michiganlearning.org, or having your antenna on so that you can watch a show. And for me, I guess when I think about the possibility that this opens for all of us, I just always go back to our literacy essentials. With the recent updates that we did, there's a core commitment piece of that. It says that we're committed to an education system in which educators, families, communities, and children are respected and supported. And we are also committed to working against all forms of bias that cause harm and lead to inequitable education and literacy and across all subjects and domains. So when I think about all the content that's available, freely accessible, it doesn't matter where you live and what your zip code is, it really aligns to what our commitment is as a group of members of the Early Literacy Task Force that worked on these documents with MAISA, and us as a group in the state of Michigan as literacy leaders in Michigan. That's what we're all committed to. So we appreciate having us on to be able to talk about it. I'm quite grateful. And hopefully, if you're listening, you're just going to check out that website and see what you can find that interests you.
Yeah, and I feel like the two of you have really done a nice job of setting up a lot of entry points. You've proposed a lot of different lenses or ways that, whether I'm a classroom teacher, maybe I'm a parent, maybe I'm a student, and how I can access different resources and materials and use them to keep that learning going and have additional learning opportunities. You talked about the resources that were available, not just lesson plans or things that are around what might traditionally be happening in the classroom, but things that can take you beyond that and maybe be more along the lines of your interest and engagement. You did a really nice job there showcasing the accessibility of the materials and the resources that you've referenced. And I'm sure for a lot of our listeners, they've probably been listening saying, hey, I can do that. So that shameless recruiting that you put out there and getting them access to it, because we'd love to have them do that. And we know that we do have a lot of great listeners to our podcast that certainly can do that. And so we hope they take advantage of that challenge that you proposed for them. And hopefully we can see them in this situation. But what a great opportunity. And thanks for sharing more information around it to keep the learning going for those that we're supporting here through our podcast.
Thank you
Thanks
so
so
much.
much.
Thank you for joining us for this LLCN brief podcast today. We appreciate our guests, Annie Spear and Rachel Cain. Thank you for sharing your insight into the Michigan Learning Channel and implications for literacy learning both in and out of the classroom. If you're looking to access the resources from today's podcast episode, please visit our electronic document, LLCN 2324 resources at bit.ly/capital L, capital L, capital C, capital N, lowercase resources 2324. Again, that bit.ly is bit.ly/capital L, capital L, capital C, capital N, lowercase resources 2324.
We look forward to connecting with you again in the near future. Also, we're looking for your suggestions on topics as well as questions you may have related to literacy. Please take the time to let us know what you want to learn more about through the Google form, bit.ly/capital L, capital L, capital C, capital N, all lowercase topics. Again, bit.ly/capital L, capital L, capital C, capital N, all lowercase topics.
You can earn sketch credit by listening to the LLCN Brief Podcast. Podcast PDX is bite sized learning that allows you to earn sketch credit for doing something you already love, listening to the LLCN Brief Podcast.
We know you are busy. This professional learning opportunity will meet you where you are, anytime, anywhere. You can earn up to 1.25 sketch credits per episode by listening and briefly reflecting. We have made it easy to earn your credits. Just visit our podcast PDX homepage. This can be found at bit.ly, that's bit.ly/all lowercase podcast, capital P, capital D, lowercase x. At this homepage, you'll find 3 easy steps to take to get you on the road to earning sketch credit while listening to your favorite literacy podcast. Thank you for listening today.